If I was blind, tell me how would you finish this line?
Das truth. The sun burned down upon them in a hot orange sky during the day, and a bright white array of stars illuminated the sky at night. The cool breeze that floated between the trees gave them some relief in the evening. People of various ages amongst the caravan stoked blazing fires in front of their mismatched tents at night. The smell of herbs, rice, and whatever lingered in the air. The faint sounds of guitar music, dancing, singing, and storytelling brought on feelings of comfort for Cameron. He watched everyone's smiling faces as he sat down outside of his tent. Children laughed and ran between the tent in a thrilling game of tag. He allowed his eyes to close as he took solace in their normalcy. Then he heard the light footsteps against the gravel approaching. He opened his eyes and looked up. "Hey, come inside my tent. We have some things to discuss," Charlie said, smiling from ear to ear. Cameron stood up and followed Charlie to his tent, which was not too far from his. Situation. They both crawled inside one after the other. Charlie turned and pulled out 2 small cases from his pack and handed one to Cameron. "What's this?" he said. Charlie nodded. "These are the newest tech and communication links. These are the nano lenses which you wear like contact lenses. It will give you the ability to view your surroundings and scan everything you see, including faces. It uplinks the information to our new artificial intelligence satellite, which will analyze the situation and environment you are viewing and feed back info to you through those lenses. Some of its features are facial recognition, weapons analysis, and other situational information," Charlie said, smiling. "This will come in handy for our next assignment, which Mother will deliver to us in 3 minutes. So put them on now," he said as he opened his case. He pulled out a smaller case with 2 clear contact lenses laying in soluble clear liquid. Cameron nodded and followed suit. He opened his case too, put a lens in the tip of his finger, leaned his head back, and inserted it into his eye. He blinked a few times and inserted the other. Immediately he saw information streaming in as the lens analyzed the contents of the tent. "Whoa, how does it keep power?" Cameron said as he looked around the tent. The lens put a blue outline on a pot in the corner of the tent and identified the item to him. A blue set of letters with the word pot appeared above the item. Charlie laughed. "Yeah, this is some genius stuff here, isn't it? Some tech geeks working with DARPA came up with this little beauty. Definitely a handy little gadget," Charlie said, smiling. "Did you know humans are nothing but walking batteries? We produce enough energy in our bodies to power a city, but no one figured out how to harness it until now. So your body's own energy, the electricity you generate, powers the device. As long as you're breathing, it will work. Pretty cool, huh?" Charlie said. Cameron nodded as he continued to analyze the items in the tent. "This next assignment will be coordinated between 10 teams. All of us have similar missions. There are even tech teams whose sole job is to orchestrate electronic attacks by hacking points of interest, power grids, financial systems, and media systems. Let me show you something. This just happened today," he said, grinning as he pulled out his phone and set a network link and flipped his browser to a news station. Cameron watched station after station report massive power outages throughout Caracas and other cities. He looked up at Charlie. Charlie smirked. "We did this?" he questioned. Charlie nodded and grinned. "Yep, and this is only the beginning." Cameron watched video after video on YouTube of chaos and mayhem in the dark streets of Caracas. People lined up in herds during the day looking for assistance and food as the Venezuelan government scrambled to repair their power grids and restore services to various parts of the city. Families were already displaced in dangerous parts of the city. A bit of his conscience became seared, but he did not share his feelings of anxiety with Charlie, especially not as he was clearly reveling in their successful coordinated attack. Cameron kept his face blank as he watched videos of businesses and banks shutting down for lack of electricity. Then he saw an interview of a few people providing their account of recent violent acts being committed all over. "Yeah, we have to go. Becoming too dangerous around here. Even the gangs can't offer enough protection against the criminal element that is taking advantage of the darkness. I mean, Just a few days ago, a good friend of mine, Miguel, was brutally attacked for the generator he used to power his food truck. It's getting really bad, but I know our government is doing all it can to fix this, so we'll have to wait and see. It's getting crazy out here, said a short woman with a ponytail holding two small fidgeting children to her chest. His stomach rolled when he saw the image of Miguel's broken body laying up in the hospital. He wanted to scream, but kept his composure. You okay? Charlie probed. He nodded. Just asking. You looked a little pale there for a moment, Charlie said. I'm okay. It's just that I knew him, he said as he handed Charlie back his phone. Our conference is about to start, he said as he turned his head to a blank area of the tent. They both inserted their nearly invisible earpieces into their ears. Cameron looked at the same spot as Charlie. A silhouetted, shadowy female figure suddenly appeared. Her voice was slightly masked by a low, distorted octave. Thank you all for attending this meeting. Your next mission will be to search the caravan for clandestine forces who may have sought to infiltrate the caravan. Your job will be to eliminate them before they reach the U.S. border. All methods of elimination have been granted. Other points and persons of interest will be relayed to each of you. Some will be coordinated between teams, and others may be individual assignments along the way. Remember, if you are caught, we will deny any knowledge of you. Do you accept this mission? She said. She began to roll call each person by their code name. He heard at least 30 names. He had not thought so many operatives had been involved in this mission, but they were. Cipero, do you accept your mission? Charlie's face hardened. I do, he said. Thank you. Your extra assignments have now been sent to your comlink, she said. Charlie looked down at his phone, and Cameron could see a mass of information being activated in his phone in high-tech fashion. He began accessing coordinates and streamlined intel. Atlas, do you accept your mission? She said. He looked back at her. Yes, he said. Your assignments will be given to you now, she said. He looked down at his encrypted biometric activated black phone. The faces of potential terrorists, gang members, and persons of interest began to flood his display. Their faces and information streamed in 3D form. Thank you all and good luck. Your countries appreciate your participation and sacrifice. Godspeed, she said as her shadowy figure faded into black. The census. Somewhere Westwood, California, 7:30 p.m. The soft sound of a ceiling fan's cord echoed down a hall that led to a smaller room with black soundproof pads where Seth Jordan sat, 26, red beanie with an angry smiley face emoticon embroidered on it. He matched the hat with a red Marvel Comics t-shirt of Deadpool. He sat behind a desk with 3 computer displays pecking away at his glowing neon keyboard. He raised a can of Coke to his mouth, gulped its contents, and sat the can back down upon the desk. He smirked, adjusted the cameras on his desk, and cracked his knuckles as his channel's intro music queued up. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Real Truth TV. I'm your host, Seth Jordan, and I'm here to bring you yet another Quick Think episode. I've got an interesting thought for you tonight, and you guys can tell me what you think of it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more. There is also a link in the description box where you can show your appreciation by copying some of our swag items like this hat from our channel store, or you can click the link to donate to help support the channel. As always, I'm grateful for you tuning in tonight, so let's get into the unexpected 2035 census, he said as he took a quick swig of his soda. Now, usually the census is only done every 10 years, but our current president is calling for an early census, which has a lot of people skeptic, especially given his position on immigrants and migrant workers. Normally, the Census Bureau collects the data by the voluntary public. You've seen them, dudes or women with rolled up sleeves and white shirts going around your neighborhood door to door asking you a series of questions about your recognized gender, age, ethnicity, race, and how many folks live in your house. They don't ask too much. They basically are just trying to get a basic feel for population growth and its dynamics so that proper funding can be granted to states based on this information. It also helps when states ask for specific social funds for their areas. The census info can provide information for businesses and employment opportunities. It is also used to determine how much funding needs to be provided based on population needs and growth for roads, schools, agriculture, and other things to ensure everyone has equal opportunity and equal access to much needed services, he said, taking a quick breath. But the most obscure kicker is that it is also used to determine how many voting blocks each state has. The more population, the more voting blocks a state gets, or at least that is how it is supposed to work, he said, raising his fingers in quotation marks. But for the last 20 or 30 years or more, we have not abided by that rule. Matter of fact, California has more population than Texas, yet Texas has more voting blocks than California. So the whole voting thing is pretty convoluted, especially with these politicians being caught red-handed trying to gerrymander districts by moving district lines in an attempt to shore up political weight in various areas that may not have leaned their way in the past to choke out their political rivals' party influence as far as votes in that same area. There have been many protests in regards to these illegal voting acts. With that being said, this is why the early census has drawn huge skepticism. They are attempting yet again to try to include a new question on the census that has never been asked before. Be reminded, they tried this twice before during the 2020 and 2030 census, which were both struck down due to fears that this request was politically motivated. The Census Bureau is a freestanding government agency which is supposed to be free of political interference and influence. So when our president requested that we include a person's citizenship status, it raised a few red flags, Seth said, holding up a football referee violation flag. He raised the black whistle to his mouth and blew. The whistle sound echoed throughout the room. Foul, called on, "We don't trust you," Seth said, grinning as he put away his flag and whistle. I know some of you may think it is harmless to ask this question, but it isn't. Remember, the census is voluntary, but if you start asking people citizenship status, they may choose to not participate, which means your state could lose funding for a lot of things it needs because those people will not be counted as part of the population, even though they may be there. I mean, none of them want to see ICE kicking down their door and tearing their families apart like they are at the border. One of the ways this miscount could affect you is if less funding is provided by the government to help run a particular state. It means that state will be forced to either cut funding for needed programs, hold back on critical infrastructure repairs, or up your state taxes across the board. Most of the time, the states do all of these in order to recoup the losses. So yeah, God with a bunch of acres, your land tax may increase significantly or double. Oh yeah, dude with the small business, that grant you were applying for from the state will not be there for your much needed renovation. Oh, and guy running the nonprofit business for the after school youth reading program, that grant you were depending on will not be granted due to budget cuts because the government doesn't believe you have the population to support the request. Oh, and that pothole that has been tearing up your tires will not get repaired because it just can't be fitted into the budget at that moment. So you and Michelin will become good friends. Just saying. But when you start widening your understanding and begin to educate yourself on how this delicate system works, you begin to see things at the macro level as well. Then you also begin to see how each decision these knuckleheads make will affect you. You see, most people don't care until the issues we are bringing up are knocking on their back door. And here we are again fighting old and bigoted agendas. The moment we cross a line from Sweden to political affiliation, conspiracy, we find our own selves in the crosshairs. Don't believe me? Look at history, he said, pulling up photos and videos of Hitler, Stalin, Pharaoh, Rwanda, Trail of Tears, Bosnia, Indonesia, India, Babylon, Kazakhstan, and so on. Some of you may not get the correlation, but let me make it clear for you. What each of these videos and pictures has in common is that they all were the scenes of some of the most horrific agendas in history. But the most interesting part was that it all started because of a little census. When their economies began to fail, these rebels and leaders looked for someone to blame for their failings. They target the most vulnerable of their population by implementing policies that cut them off from services. When that wasn't enough, they brought in a census to see what the population consisted of. Then the vulnerable groups became more targeted through more policies and political restrictions to silence their voice. But once the results of the census came back, they required those individuals to walk around with some sort of identification to further sift them from the rest. All of this happened just before decrees were made to round them up, imprison them, and execute them. The agendas are real, and history does not lie, Seth said. He took another sip of his soda. I think the biggest cause for concern is the fact that they are attempting to put this question and many other questions like your religious affiliation in the new census. Also, the fact that they're asking for it too soon should raise a few red flags anyways. Like, where's the fire? When asked why he wants these particular questions added, his camp says they want this information to see the voting ages of the population in relation to the Voting Rights Act, meaning they want to use the census information to further obscure voting influence within states' districts. This is the only reason to want this information, but we all call bull because a person's citizenship status has nothing to do with voting. Mainly because non-citizens can't vote anyways, so that explanation makes no sense, he said, twisting his face into hard, confused lines. Also, the census does not provide specific information collected to outside agencies. The only time the Census Bureau has ever done this was during World War II, which resulted in President Roosevelt issuing Executive Order 9066. That resulted in 110,000 Japanese Americans being put into internment camps in 1942. And during 9/11, when President Bush issued the Patriot Act, which caused thousands of Muslim Americans across the U.S. to be targeted, arrested, and followed by every alphabet imaginable without cause. This is how a tiny census can be weaponized to do some awful crap, he said, shaking his head. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. They came for the trade unions, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade union. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. They came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Martin Niemöller. This is what happens when we don't sound the alarm when we see the wolves, the coyotes, the vipers, and the hyenas coming. Ignore the signs if you like, but don't cry when you see the results swinging for your head too. Just saying. Seth out, he said, smiling and holding up two fingers in the form of a peace sign as his outro music played. Identity. Leon Hoyt, 54, graying hair, gray suit, with a ready smile, and Dee Sawyer, 54, blonde hair, red dress, bright smile, sit at their silver anchor desk with the blue neon-lit Channel 7 News logo on its front. They straightened their papers as a cameraman raised his fingers in a countdown. Their station's theme music played as the camera focused in on the two. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for watching Channel 7 Action News. It's now 8:30 p.m., Friday, April 22nd. My name is Leon Hoyt, he said happily, and I'm his co-anchor, Dee Sawyer. Thank you for tuning in with us this evening, she said, smiling. Tensions are beginning to wane between Israel and the Palestinian government over the Golan Heights. The UN Security Council is hoping that the peace accord will mean an end to the war between the two nations and finally bring stability within that region, she said. He nodded. In other news, President Draven is proposing a change to the Real ID system as a part of his new crime bill, which will mean an upgrade to its biometrics database. Some groups and alarmists are stating that the changes to the system may violate certain privacy laws. Lawmakers state that they are still looking over the proposed changes, he said, smiling. Does anyone know what kind of changes will be made to the system, she said, as her face scrunched up a bit. He looked through a piece of paper in his hand. Yes, some of the changes will be to include iris biometrics, criminal and motor vehicle history. This is also an upgrade to the EMV flat chip embedded in the Real ID card already that will allow users to connect their medical records as well as in a single encrypted endpoint-to-endpoint security measure in compliance with HIPAA. The proposal will require all adults 18 years or older to carry the Real ID with them at all times. Some state lawmakers have proposed that a stop and frisk law be allowed and proposed as a federal law in an attempt to crack down on illegal immigration. This law will allow officers to stop you and request your ID and even frisk you if deemed necessary, he asked, holding his smile. Her face creased and her smile fell. I can see how this can be alarming for some. I mean, this change can cross all kinds of legal boundaries. I mean, I'm pretty sure no one wants to be frisked coming out of the movie theater because an officer feels the need to stop them. And what about the disproportionate number of arrests that certain groups, like minorities, already face? Wouldn't this just add to the problem they have already? I know that a few civil liberties groups are currently fighting this proposal before Congress. I guess we'll learn the outcome soon enough. I don't know about you, but this is one story I will definitely keep my eye on, she said as her face fell into a serious hard line. Her eyebrows turned down as she looked down at her papers. She fumbled them a bit. Leon looked over at her and then smiled up at the camera nervously. Well, we can look at it like this, he said, smiling. If you connect your medical records to your real ID and you got into an accident that left you unable to communicate your needs, wouldn't it be nice if the medical staff and ambulance would be able to access your medical information to see what you are allergic to and properly treat you? This way, they don't accidentally give you medicine that may react badly or give you medicine you may have already taken. This could really save a life and shorten their treatment response times. Your medical history will allow them to offer you the best medical help as quickly as possible. I think that is what the upgrade to the Real ID system is attempting to address. I think this is a great idea if that is the idea behind the upgrade, he said, pushing forth his strongest argument for the proposal. I guess you could be right. I never thought of it like that, she said, half enthused. They both laughed nervously. Well, we'll have more news for you after this quick commercial break. Please stay tuned, she said as a cameraman held up a hand. The studio's outro music queued up. She got up from her desk silently, yet fidgeting. Her face was a bit red and flushed. What are you doing? Leon said as he turned toward Dee with a hard-set face. His eyes were brooding with anger. Dee's face frowned as she looked up at him a bit flustered. What do you mean, what am I doing? You mean, what does he think he's doing? I remember history. Do you? At first, like everyone else, I thought he was a complete idiot, but he's not. He's Hamlet. He plays the fool, but in reality, he is far from it. While everyone is being entertained by his foolery with one hand, the other hand holds the dagger to kill you with. These types of people are the most dangerous types, Leon. The proposals seem small right now, but they're merely bricks to a much bigger, more dangerous plot. Mark my words, she said as she paced the floor. She folded her arms and bit her nails. I don't trust him or any policy he makes, she said, dropping her hands and looking up at him. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with all of you? You keep entertaining him. You keep giving him a platform. You keep letting him chip away and chip away. Why can't you guys see what he is? We're just as much as at fault because we could call out this BS if we wanted to. But instead we keep giving him a platform to keep speaking from and wonder why our world is so chaotic right now. But there is something wrong with me, she said as she laughed. Pushed her hands through her hair as Leon stared at her with concern. Let's not be neurotic here. You're jumping to conclusions. All he is trying to do is keep everyone safe, Leon said as he stepped toward her with his palms up in surrender. Dee looked up at Leon in total disbelief. Did you hear nothing I just said? She said as she stared at him with wide eyes and a scowl. You can believe what you want, but I don't trust him. It's our responsibility to warn the public. If not, then what are we doing here? She said, exacerbated. He grit his jaw, looked down at the floor for a moment, and looked back up at her. Report the news, without bias or opinion. Let the public make up their own minds about the information we provide, he said. She looked up at him. But what if they're wrong? She said with watery, pleading eyes. His brows fell as low as his countenance. Then that is their choice, and may God help us, he said as he stared back at her. Then he nodded. She stared back at him for a moment and nodded as well. History is repeating, she said solemnly. It seems so, he said. Let's get some coffee. We got a long night ahead of us, he said as he escorted her out of the studio area toward a long refreshment table, littered with beautifully displayed golden croissants, assorted fruit, and 3 large silver coffee dispensers. Contagion. During the day, as they traveled along the caravan, Cameron walked amongst the group, allowing his iris tech to scan the faces of every person he laid eyes on. Their background information was quickly ran across all government agencies' databases, both in the U.S. and from around the world. Each agency worldwide agreed to share their database information as a part of the International Global Peace Accord security protocol. The information they collected was also uploaded and shared across the same agencies. It had been an international global effort to stop criminal activity and terrorism. The faces of each person was checked and cross-referenced. A few times a kill order came across a few in red after his tech scanned them. He tapped their shoulders or rubbed past them during the day as they traveled. Then at night, he'd lie in wait when all was silent and everyone was asleep. Like a deadly viper, he'd crawl into their tents, cut their throats, or inject them with poison. The next day, everyone would wake up, gather their things, and move on. Only a few times someone would check on the tents of those who did not come out during the morning call to move out. The reports of the murders and tales of mysterious deaths plagued the camp conversations during the night and made news headlines during the day. Cameron knew they had a tech team infiltrating social media conversations. Their sole job was to cause confusion and make the general public question the integrity of the approaching caravan. Their bots were hard at work painting a negative light on the movement. He played his part and Charlie played his, although he never knew what Charlie had been assigned to do. They were only a week away from the U.S. border, and he had yet to receive any new orders. Charlie constantly disappeared, and reports of measles had begun to spread throughout the caravan. Dr. Savannah, a 34-year-old short traveling physician with long black hair that she kept pulled back into a ponytail, had agreed to be part of the caravan's escort team and treat the cases along the way. One night, Cameron entered Charlie's tent unannounced. Charlie held a syringe up to a small solar lamp as he stuck it into a clear glass tube and drew out the liquid. "What are you doing?" he said as his eyebrows raised in high arches. Charlie looked up as he put a cap on the needle. "My part," he said as he tucked the needle into his green camouflage coat with 3 others. "What is it?" he asked. Charlie smirked. "Measles." Cameron swallowed in disbelief. "So what brings you to my tent?" he said, packing some other stuff into a small black pack. "I was just wondering if you heard anything from Mother lately. I haven't received any new orders," he questioned. Charlie smirked. "We each have our parts to play, Cam. Be patient," he said as he stood up and patted him on the shoulder. "She'll find a new use for you soon enough. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm pretty sure the whole caravan hasn't been identified yet. Remember, we're here to protect our nation's interests, even with our very lives," he said as he followed him out of the tent. He couldn't understand how infecting the caravan with measles was protecting the nation's interests. His thoughts worked through their logic. These people who were seeking asylum weren't sneaking in but applying. If they are let in, then the measles could spread into the country. But then again, they are checked at the border for this kind of stuff. At least he thought they would. They'd be detained and quarantined. He shook his head and watched Charlie disappear into the darkness. He walked about the camp and crept toward a campfire where a group of immigrants sat around eating, drinking, singing, and telling stories. He bent down behind a tent and listened to the stories. They reminded him of a time when his mother used to tell him bedtime stories. They lived in a rundown apartment in Queens, New York, and his mother worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. She was a maid at a motel during the day and a waitress at a nearby diner during the night. She'd had one of their neighbors watch him before she left for work during the night. But before she left, she'd tell him a bedtime story. When she was done, she'd kiss him softly on the cheeks. Just before she leaves, she whispered, "Te amo, I love you." One night, she didn't come back. The next day, the police found her face down, dead in an alleyway. The attack believed to be a robbery gone wrong. He was 8 then. The day after his mother's funeral, he went into the same alleyway and spray painted his first set of angel wings upon the very wall where she was found. His art was crude and elementary then, but he told his mother he would work on it over time. The next day, they took him far from there and placed him into a group home. But he sneaked off in the middle of the night, returned to the wall, and worked on the mural he started long ago to remember his mother. Cameron closed his eyes to the painful memory that threatened to tear his soul apart, and for a moment forgot where he was. "The stories are much better up close," said a woman's voice giggling from behind him. Cameron's eyes shot open, bringing him back to reality. He quickly turned to face her. "I didn't want to intrude. They don't know me," Cameron said humbly. The woman standing before him was short, with long, dark hair pulled into a ponytail. She wore dark cargo pants that conformed to the Coke bottle shape of her body, with a tan blouse. Brown prayer beads graced her wrists. "Well, best way to get to know people is to introduce yourself and not hide in the shadows like a ghost," she said, laughing. Cameron laughed too. "Yeah, I guess you're right," he said. "Come on, I'll introduce you. You hungry? We're making fajitas and rice," she said, waving him on. He nodded and followed her toward the camp. "My name is Dr. Cynthia Savannah. I am one of the volunteer traveling physicians to ensure the health and welfare of the caravan," she said, smiling. "You must be pretty busy with the measles outbreak right now," he said, guiltily probing. She took her head and rubbed the back of her neck as they approached the group sitting around the campfire. Children joyfully played with a tattered soccer ball, kicking it back and forth to each other. "Yes, it's kind of weird how it came out of nowhere. I checked everyone before we left. I can only think that someone must have contracted it as we passed by one of the towns. I managed to keep it under control and treat it, only because I brought all kinds of medicine with me just in case we needed it. Every town we pass, I re-up my supplies to ensure we can keep these people healthy and safe," she said, smiling as they headed toward a man passing out paper plates with food on it. She approached the man and held up 2 fingers. The old man happily smiled with 2 missing teeth, dressed 2 plates, and handed them to her. She turned and passed Cameron a plate with frijoles, yellow rice, and 2 fajita rolls on the side. She handed him a plastic fork. Cameron accepted the plate and followed Dr. Savannah to a wood log near the campfire. The orange and yellow flames lit the air and danced upon the pile of wood surrounded by gray stones. He watched mothers and fathers kissing their children and tickling them as they sang Spanish songs. Another man, short in stature with a sparse beard, pulled out a harmonica and began to play with a young, skinny boy playing a guitar with the hands of 10 men, it seemed. The young boy's fingers effortlessly slid across the strings in hypnotic tones. He was better than most professionals in his mind. He strummed out beautiful, soul-moving music that made his feet want to move. Young girls, women, and men gleefully danced with each other around the fire. "They seem really happy," he said. "They are. That is Miguel and his family. He is hoping that he can attain asylum in America. They lost everything in a mudslide which caused them to have to move down from the mountains and into the city where they're from. The gangs and cartels controlled a lot of those areas. He saw no other way to survive other than to try to go somewhere else to keep his family safe," he said as they watched them dance. "His grandfather is Hector. He gave us the food. Over there is his grandmother, Maria, who's plaiting the little girl's hair," he said, pointing to a short woman with chubby cheeks and long silver hair. "He has 3 daughters, who you see him dancing with, and his wife, who is singing next to their son, Alberto, who is playing the guitar. The man playing the harmonica is their friend and neighbor who lost his home too. He has no familia. They were all lost in the slide," she said, smiling at their joy. Cameron looked upon them with empathy. He knew what it felt like to want to start over and to not have anyone. "Miguel is lucky to have them. What he has is worth trying and fighting for," he said solemnly. A streak of sadness entered his face and a small crease upon his forehead. The doctor noticed. "You lost someone too?" she asked compassionately. "Yeah, 2 people. My mom, when I was younger, she used to tell me bedtime stories just like they're full fantasies and wonders and happy endings. That's what drew me over here. I heard them telling each other stories. It brought back a lot of memories. I recently lost a friend, Miguel. I found out 2 nights ago that he died in the hospital. When the lights went out in Caracas, someone beat him up badly and stole his generator. He had been in a coma for 2 weeks. They just pulled the plug on him. He didn't survive. Brain dead. He was a good guy. He didn't deserve that. He was the type of guy that would give you the shirt off his back if you asked him to. All he ever asked was that you shoot straight with him, you know?" he said, feeling the anger in him begin to boil up out of nowhere. He didn't even notice that his eyebrows had fell into dark furrows and his fists had clenched into tight balls, cutting the circulation, until he felt a small, warm hand cover it. "Anger will do you no good. The best thing that you can do for those who you have lost is to live your life to its fullest and start over as many times as you need to until you find your peace," she said, smiling at him. His face softened as his anger quickly melted away. He smiled back at her. Then he looked at Miguel and his family and smiled. "You're right. It is easy to be angry. much harder to forgive, but I want to be happy, like Miguel. They have lost a lot, but they are still smiling and still trying. I admire the fight in them. That's doable, he said with a smile and chuckle. Definitely, she said, laughing too. They both scooped the small rice lentils into their mouth and ate the food on their plates. They spent the rest of the night singing songs and telling stories around the fire. He felt free for the first time in his whole life since his mother's death. He felt like he belonged amongst them. He, like them, had been a wanderer. He just never knew it until then. Even time. 11 p.m., some dark parking garage, Washington, D.C. We are going to create an event at your border in 2 days. This will ensure that our plans take effect according to our timeline. We thought you should know, Curio said, 45, Russian intelligence. Clean face, black suit and tie. Are we sure this is necessary? Did your boss approve this? President Draven said, 72, blonde hair, and staunch posture. Curio smirked, as if slightly entertained and slightly annoyed. His smile did not reach his cold, dark eyes. Who? You mean Mr. Putin? Curio asked. President Draven nodded. Curio's smile widened. You, more than anyone, knows the answer to this. Did you see him in Italy? Or anyone who is close to him there? Exactly. He chose not to be a part of this. He is serving his purpose for now, until we decide if we want his position to be usurped. Curio straightened his shoulders. Only those who have agreed to the pact are invited to the party. You know this, but we will somehow link his regime as being part of these events. War makes us all money. Perceptions cause war, despite all evidence to the contrary. He is somewhat unaware of our plans. It is funny to see him try to stop us, but he will not be able to, as is the leader of North Korea and Iran. They suspect, which is why they buck against our advances and proposals, but we will pull them in due time, either by choice or through force. There is none that can escape our reach, Curio said, smiling again. President Draven swallowed and shuffled nervously about. Even you would betray your country? Go against Putin? This is crazy. Are we sure we want to do this? I mean, there will be chaos, he said, pacing a bit. Be calm, Draven. My loyalty is to the cabal, and all those who choose to be a part of it. Nothing less. All will work out. Order out of chaos, Draven. Seldom do people allow certain measures such as we are proposing to be accepted without a fight. How do you think something so unconstitutionally incorrect like your Patriot Act came about? Terrorism and fear brings change. The real change that is needed to regain control of a system that has gone out of control. The best way to pull a resistant public into such a system is to give them a good reason to do so by giving them something to greatly fear. Then make their fears a reality. This way they will willingly give in. Make them believe that it is their idea and that these measures are what's best for them. People will hand you their freedom if you give them something to fear. The fear cannot be of you if you want to remain in power, or they will quickly realize what is happening and rise up, he said as he raised his palms up. He lifted up a single finger and continued. A carefully curated face or faces in me will give them plenty of push to go along with the new system that will come from it, he said. Draven stopped dead in his tracks. The border. What is going to happen there? Will anyone get hurt? He questioned. Curio nodded. There are always casualties of war, Draven. The less you know, the better. It is called plausible deniability. Just let us worry about the detail and just get your response measures ready, he said as he handed Draven another manila folder. He turned away from Draven and climbed back into the back seat of a big black SUV and drove away. Draven looked down at the folder. He rubbed his face hard in the palm of his hand as his conscience seared him as he was left alone in the dark of the night again. 11:15, Denver, Colorado. Angela, 34, dark clothing, sat inside a small gray inconspicuous rental car on a dark off-road watching several long white semi-trucks and several small black vans drive in and out of a large gray facility with 6 tunnel entries. Guards carrying semi-automatic weapons in black suits patrolled the grounds like clockwork. Another set of guards paced back and forth around the entrances of the tunnels. She raised a pair of binoculars up to her face and looked through them. The lens focused in on the badges on the upper sleeve of their uniforms. Black tie. A sketchy private security firm's logo was stitched there. The company had a reported reputation for using obscure methods of implementing a high level of security and information extraction. They had acquired several government security contracts from Afghanistan to Iraq. Most of their personnel were mostly veterans, ex-federal agents, and high-level security agents from around the globe. They were highly secretive and nothing to play with. She also saw military vehicles and a few civilian vehicles enter and exit this place. And from what she could see, most of the truckers were civilian, just from the regular clothes they wore. Her phone rang a low twinkling sound, like a soft lullaby. Angela fumbled for her phone and answered. "Hello?" she said. "Angela, what are you doing? Since you come back from vacation, I have hardly seen you. And now I'm looking at your corporate card and I'm seeing expenditures from Baltimore to Utah." Howie, 46, gray suit, said as he sat down at a long wooden desk that was slightly illuminated by a small oval desk lamp. "I'm doing what you told me to. I'm following my story," she said as she looked through her binoculars again. "Which story?" he questioned. "The Safe Haven program. I'm following the story. I got a lead while I was on vacation. I met one of them, a survivor," she said, a bit preoccupied with the guard changes at the tunnel entrances. "A real one? In South America?" "What?" Howie said with excitement. "Yeah, he said Safe Haven is not what it seems. He warned me to get out of America while I still could. He said the wall was a trap," she said, watching a trucker leave. "Trap? Are you sure this guy just wasn't messing with you? You know people are crazed with conspiracy theories nowadays," he said. "Yeah, I thought so too until I saw the evidence of what he went through on his arm. I think all of these little things going on are all connected. The wall, whatever is driving the caravan, what's happening in Venezuela, and the homeless disappearances are all connected somehow," she said, lowering her binoculars. "How?" he said. "I don't know, but something is definitely off about this whole situation. I said it from the start," she said. A trucker at another entrance waved at a guard as he left and yelled goodbye in a deep southern accent. "Hey, I'll talk to you later about what I found so far. I've got to go," she said as she put her car into gear with the headlights still turned off. "Okay, Angela, be safe," he said as he clicked the phone off. A long, white semi-truck turned out of the third guard gate and drove down the road. Angela pulled out from the wooded path she was parked on and followed. She didn't turn her lights back on until she knew she was far enough away from the facility. She drove on, determined to catch up to the trucker to find out how much he knew about the tunnels and what it looked like down there. 11:30, the caravan. ETA, 36 hours. Cameron lay down in his tent with his arms folded behind his head with his eyes open. He thought about what he had been doing for the past 3 years. He thought about the night he met Mercury, his recruiter. He thought about his mother and Miguel and his time with them. He thought about the life and the families he met and saw amongst the caravan. He thought about their stories, so much like his own, and wondered why he kept going. The mission was the mission, right? He thought. He rubbed his eyes, hoping to erase the battle between his conscience and his job. He wanted to protect America and its people, but he also wanted to keep these people safe too. He figured Border Patrol would work things out once they got there. They had crossed rivers, streams, and took a murky ride in the belly of a damp fishing boat to get into Mexico from South America. They had passed through a bunch of towns that tried to accommodate them along the way. In less than 36 hours, they would be at the U.S. border, and his assignment would finally be over. He had made up his mind that that would be the perfect time to take some time off from the job for a while, at least until he figured out some things. Each job he'd done so far had paid him handsomely, and he stashed his earnings in a few safe places. He allowed his breathing to slow and let his mind clear. He imagined himself spraying a wall in golden yellow and black colors. The spray of the paint misted the air. Then out of nowhere he heard the soft sound of footsteps hitting the gravel past his tent. He got up slowly and grabbed his gun. He tucked the gun between his waistband and slowly pulled the zipper of his tent down. He watched the shadowy figure tiptoe toward various tents and bent down. He followed the figure and watched him zip down a pack outside of one of the tents. The figure pulled out a gun from a black pack that was slung across his shoulder and slipped it into the pack of the bag. Then he watched the figure of the person move between another tent and pull out a small square-shaped pack. He stuffed it down in the hiker's bag that hung outside of another tent. This went on for about 5 minutes and then the figure stealthily ran back toward the direction it came from. Cameron quickly jumped behind the tent so as not to be spotted. Then he followed the figure close behind and watched the figure emerge from the shadows. It was Charlie. He followed him a few paces behind into another shadowy area. A man, short in stature with messy black hair, drunkenly staggered off into a nearby wooded area. The man stood for a moment and pulled the zipper to his pants down and began to pee into a small bush. He watched Charlie quietly tiptoe behind the man, grab him by the head, and inject the man with a small hypodermic needle. The man fought for a second, grabbing at Charlie's strong arm. After a few minutes, his arms went limp and fell to the ground in a loud thud as dust and earth kicked up in a cloud. Cameron wiped his brow as he watched Charlie kneel down over the man and pull out another small needle. He stuck it in the man's thigh and then stood up quickly. He regarded the man with cold, expressionless black eyes and walked away. He had never seen him look so cold. He left the man laying on the ground unconscious. Cameron waited for Charlie to disappear into the shadows again, and he walked up to the man. He saw dust slightly pushed away as the man slowly breathed out and in. Cameron turned and walked back toward his tent. He regarded Charlie's small, tan military tent for a moment, and then he turned back toward his own. "Hey," Charlie said, peeking his head out of his tent. Then he whistled toward Cameron. "What's up?" he said as he turned to face Charlie. Charlie bumbled out of his tent and threw a small cylinder tube, no bigger or wider than his thumb, at him. "What's this?" he said. Charlie smirked. "An insurance policy," he replied. Cameron raised the vial up to what little light that cast from his comm phone. He shook the clear liquid and looked up at Charlie. "It's a vaccine?" he asked. Charlie grinned and nodded. "For what?" he said. Charlie giggled and turned away from him. "You'll see tomorrow. Take your meds," he said as he walked away from him. Cameron regarded the vial one more time and then turned the top and lifted the vial to his lips. It was colorless and odorless. But what concerned him the most was whatever Charlie did to that man would manifest itself in less than 12 hours. He just wasn't sure that he wanted to see what it was. Cameron returned to his tent and lay down in the dark, thinking about his conversation with the good doctor and the time he spent at the campfire. Then his mind went back to what Charlie was doing. Then he thought about the bombs he and Charlie had made before they joined the caravan. They were finally in Mexico, and maybe they had 4 or 5 major towns to go through before they finally come to the border. Maybe they had a hit to do before they got there. He didn't know. Cameron let it all leave his mind as he closed his eyes for the night. Verifiable. 11:45, Rosie's Diner, Aurora, Colorado. Angela followed the truck down the long dark roads through Denver's outskirts until they came upon a green reflective sign on the side of the road that had Aurora city limits printed upon it. She trailed the trucker a few cars so that he wouldn't notice her following him. She watched him turn into a jazzy 1950s style diner with bright yellow neon lights and old school show cars parked outside of it. She watched him inch his truck off to the side of the road and climb out. He dusted a small blue baseball cap against his leg and put it back upon his long brown mop of hair. He had the usual trucker look, brown steel-toe boots, and a good pair of worn jeans. He had a gray plaid button-down and a brown jacket to match. His jaw was all soft edges with a small brown mustache that graced his smooth face. He was average height, but he had a muscular build. She quickly found a place to park her blue rental car and followed a ways behind him. She waited until he went inside and then entered in a few minutes behind him. Inside the restaurant, the 1950s theme continued. The square tables with red chairs were complemented by sleek red, black, and white checkered floors. Old school cars, Coke, Betty Boop, the Rat Pack, and other vintage memorabilia hung upon the mural walls. She had always despised the fact that her beauty was sometimes a slight distraction, but in this instance, she planned to use it to her advantage. She watched him order his food and stepped beside him and greeted the cashier. "Good evening. I'm not sure what to order. It's my first time here. I saw it on the map and I just had to stop," she said, donning a full set of pearly whites. The trucker looked over at her, his eyes burning with intrigue and fascination. "Wow, you're beautiful," he said, without meaning for it to slip like it did. She looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you. she said, warming her smile even more. The iris of his eyes slightly flexed at the sight of Angela's soft lips, perfectly clear skin, and bright smile. You said you're not from around here? He said, hoping to entice her into a conversation. She giggled slightly like a schoolgirl. Yes. I'm originally from Virginia, but I decided to take a road trip across the country. I saw this place in the reviews and wanted to stop, she said, flicking her hair a bit so that he could see the smooth nape of her skin. His smile widened as he stared at her with soft blue eyes. Well, you chose right. Rosie's is one of the best restaurants this side of Aurora. I make it my business to stop here every time I come through here, he said, smiling harder. The lines creased at his eyes. That good, huh? She said flirtatiously. He nodded. I wouldn't mind a bit of company myself. Would you like to get your first taste of Rosie's with me? He said, pointing to a booth. I promise, I won't bite, he said, playfully snapping his teeth at her. She leaned back skeptically in a playful manner. Uh-huh, that's what they all say, she said, laughing. He laughed too, and escorted her to a corner booth. She looked around at the decorations of the restaurant. I really like what they've done here. Very energetic and fun, she said. He nodded and laughed. Yeah, you gotta admire the theme. So, what made you take a road trip all the way across the U.S.? He said, as a waitress in an old school red and white waitress attire and pinned up fiery red hair with red lipstick. The match walked up with a pen and pad. What can I get you? She said as she chewed gum between a few bubble pops. Can we have a minute? He said as he handed Angela one of the menus from the table. She nodded and walked off. I'm sorry, how rude of me. My name is John, he said, extending his large, strong hand across the table. She smiled and extended her hand to him. Angela, she said. You said you come through here a lot. Are you a trucker? She said, probing with a smile that she made sure went all the way to her eyes. John boyishly grinned. He bent his head in slight embarrassment and scratched at his mustache for a moment. I guess my plaid shirt and boots gave it away, huh? He said. He chuckled. Well, that and the sleepy look most people who have been on the road too long have, she said. He laughed and grinned. Yeah, I guess I'm a bit tired, he said, removing his ball cap and fluffing his dark hair. These roads can be long, treacherous, and lonely at times. I have to stop at little places like these to get a break, you know? She nodded and smiled. You must see some amazing things along the way. You must also hear a lot of crazy stories as well, she said as she stared directly into his soft eyes. His eyes dilated as he allowed his eyes to trail the nape of her neck and then back to her soft lips. Yeah, you also get to see some strange stuff and things hardly anyone knows about, he said, once again looking back at Angela. The waitress returned to the table with their drinks. You guys ready to order? She said, popping her gum mid-chew. He bent his head in slight embarrassment and scratched at his mustache for a moment. They both looked up and ordered. The waitress nodded as she yelled over at the cook. 1/2 baby back rib dinner and 1 seafood combo, she said. She looked at both of them. It's nice to see couples still sitting down to eat together, she said, smiling at both of them. Can I get y'all something to drink with that? She said. They both waved the lady and laughed. We're not a couple, they both said simultaneously. Then they both looked at each other and blushed. The waitress laughed. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you two were together. Well, you should be. You make a beautiful couple, she said, smiling. How about I bring you both some more tea and peach cobbler on the house to go with that dinner of yours, she said with a wink. Thank you. That's very kind of you, John said in a deep southern accent. Yes, thank you, Angela said. The waitress smiled and walked away. I hear a slight accent, John. Where are you from? She probed. He grinned again as he took a small sip of his drink. Most people say my southern accent is thick. I'm originally from Mississippi, but my job has me traveling all over the country. I drive mostly to this area nowadays, she said. I bet you've seen some crazy stuff along the way, she said again. Her reporter mind began to work in high gear. Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe half the stuff you see, especially around these parts. People do strange things on the road when they think no one is looking. I can't tell you how many people I've drove by who were absolutely stark naked, driving across the desert, he said, laughing. She bursted out laughing too. Really? Are there some strange places you've driven to around here? She said. John sipped his drink again. Oh yeah, he said, his grin widened and his eyebrows raised. He then bent in close as to keep his voice low. There is a place not too far from here that I go to. Nothing but tunnels, and it's highly secure. I guess to keep civilian traffic from going through it. I mean, these tunnels go on for miles and miles, he said, telling his story with his hands. I took the tunnel from there one time, carrying a boatload of supplies. You know, water, canned goods, and toiletries, according to the manifest. They had me drive and drive. I think I drove for at least an hour through these tunnels. I had to follow these flashing signs on the walls along the way so I'd know where to go. If you didn't follow the flashing lights, you wouldn't know where you were going and how to get out. That place is a maze. There were guards everywhere you turned. I mean, men and women in black tactical gear with the biggest guns I ever saw, he said excitedly. Guns? Why guns? She said as her face creased to worry. John shook his head in puzzlement. I don't know. But in some areas I passed by, I could see these facilities and people with those bubble hazmat suits like you see in the movies, he said as he looked up at her to make sure that she was following his story. Angela's mouth dropped. Yep, that's the way I felt when I saw it, and I became worried about whether or not I was driving the right way. After a while, the flasher stopped and I slowed down. A man in an orange vest and gray construction clothes stood out front with airline wands and began directing me to back my truck to a massive nearby loading dock etched into the stone wall. I did as the man instructed, especially after seeing more armed guards in black tactical suits run out leading these other workers in gray construction suits. They ran toward the back of my truck and pulled the cargo off. Sometimes we get drop and load orders. You know, we're supposed to help unload the cargo, but this drop and the others like it, we didn't. We'd drive the items there and they'd have their own crews unload the truck. The way the whole place looked, it was all white, and in some areas vehicles were parked. But I don't think many of those people left, because when the flashers were leading me out, I saw other facilities in there. People looked comfortable, as if they lived and worked there or something. I was also not let out the same way I came in. It was like it was an underground bunker or facility or something. They had working lights and even had a Burger King down there. It was the craziest thing to see. The tunnels that led me out looked like they could go on for miles. As I was leaving, I could see work crews with gray construction suits with pickaxes and such heading down another tunnel. They were under heavy guard as they walked in line. They were covered in all manner of dirt and dust. You could tell that they were working on the tunnel. My guess was that they were extending them. There is no telling how far or how deep these tunnels go. But what I do know is that I was so happy to leave that place, he said, giggling. She laughed. Claustrophobic? She picked. No, gunophobic, he said, laughing. There were just too many armed people down there, and the work crews did not look happy. They looked miserable as hell. My company made me sign an NDA before they sent me on this particular assignment. It's a non-disclosure agreement. It's part of the contract agreement with our company. Hell, I'm not even supposed to tell no one about what I've seen, really. But that's probably the craziest thing I've seen on the road. I just knew that I wanted to hurry up, drop my load, and hightail it out of there, he said, laughing as the waitress brought their dinner. Angela nodded in acknowledgement of the waitress and accepted her plate. The aroma of freshly fried shrimp and tilapia filled her nose with a goodness that reached into her soul and found a resting place in her now grumbling stomach. This smells good, she said. Well, I'll leave you to it. Enjoy, said the waitress as she turned and walked away smiling. They really do make some good food, I promise, he said, cutting into his food. It tastes as good as it looks and smells, he said, grinning. I'll bet, she said as she popped the shrimp into her mouth. Do you do that particular site often? She said, biting into another piece of golden fried shrimp. He nodded as he chewed his food. Yeah, about 3 or 4 times a month. I just came from that place. Been doing it for about 4 years now, he said, her eyes widened. 4 years? She repeated. Uh-huh. I enter in at the South Gate in Castle Rock, and I exit in Denver. Like I said, that facility is gigantic. They have a lot of entrances into the facility, and a lot of exits, I'm sure of it. But these are the ones I know of, he said, taking another bite. But like I said, I don't really like having to go there. That place gives me the creeps. The guards look all evil and serious, and the guys in those science suits, don't make it any better, you know? He said, shaking his shoulders as if a small draft suddenly gripped his body. Angela's face frowned as she nodded. Her mind grinned as she poked at her food. I'm sorry. How rude of me. We've been talking about me the whole time. I'm sure you're bored with it, he said, giggling. She waved and smiled. No, it's interesting, she said, half smiling. He then clenched his hands with a napkin and smirked. How about we lighten the mood a bit? Do you like dancing? There's a country bar right across the street. It's not even midnight yet, and I could use a bit of fun before I lay down for the night. How about you? He said, smiling and cocking his head toward the long rectangular building with neon lights and people with cowboy hats standing outside across the street. She looked out the window toward the club and smiled. Sure, I could use a bit of a distraction, she said. Well, all right, let's have some fun, he said, flagging the waitress for the receipt. Angela stood up. Let me go to the bathroom real quick, she said as she touched John's arm with the soft tips of her fingers. She entered the bathroom, walked up to the mirror, and stared back at her own reflection. Her eyes narrowed as she regarded her face, makeup, and clothes. Okay, let's do this, she said aloud. She turned quickly and opened the door to a smiling John. You ready? He said. Sure, lead the way, she said, smiling back.